Hi, welcome to Real Food Recovery. So glad to see you all. We have, I would say it's a special episode of Real Food Recovery that we're going to get into here in a moment. But first, I want to say hello to my partner in crime, Paige.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here. I can't wait to get in this. It's a good one. It's a good one.
It is. This is sort of, again, it's a special episode of Real Food Recovery, but it is something that we actually, Paige and I, wanted to record because it's topical. It's very topical. This is, in response to something that happened in the cultural zeitgeist this week. And Paige and I really want to give some attention to the Oprah Winfrey special, in air quotes, special that aired this week, and this was the third week in March 2024, called Shame, Blame, and the Weight Loss Revolution. It aired on the ABC affiliates here in the States, and I'm sure it aired on ABC affiliates around the world as well. Oprah's reach, as we all know, is large.
And it's on
Her
Hulu.
premise.
It's on Hulu as well.
Oh, thank you. And it's on Hulu. There we go. Her premise with the special was to invite viewers in with the guise of this sort of reducing shame and blame for those who struggle with obesity. So that's why it was titled Shame, Blame, and the Weight Loss Revolution. Paige and I agree that no blame or shame should ever be levied on those of us who struggle with food obsession, food addiction, or food abuse. It truly is not our fault because we all are inundated by the environment of overstimulating, hyperpalatable, ultra-processed foods that we live in every day.
Mhm.
After all, the society we're in, right, that creates this sort of era that even the grocery stores, their inventories are 80% processed foods. And that's if we're fortunate enough not to live in a food desert.
Right.
So in food deserts, you have no grocery stores or very few, and it's all processed foods that are available to you. In addition to the grocery store situation, processed foods are available on every street corner, in every school, at every gathering. They're part of celebrations in every single culture around the globe. So from our earliest memories, we have been overexposed to processed foods, and this hyper-stimulating environment has made it extremely easy for all of us to take in more calories than we need.
Mhm.
What's worse is how those calories are extremely highly composed of chemicals, additives, fats, and substances that our bodies do not read as food. So in addition to a hypercaloric state, our bodies are also fighting inflammation, mood changes, and hormonal fluctuations that come from these drug-like food substances. They are not food. They are drug-like substances that people call food. Okay, let me be very clear about that. The food environment we live in and try to navigate contributes greatly to obesity because essentially what we have evolved over millennia, what our bodies and genetics have evolved to eat, no longer exists in ready and available um, environments around us. We have to work harder to get the natural foods that we were designed to eat than we do these ultra processed, ultra available processed foods that are everywhere. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So again, what seals our fate for most of us are the other lifestyle choices that we make on top of the food. So we've got the obesity from the environment we live in, and then the lifestyle choices that seal the deal. And I'm talking about sedentary lifestyle.
Oh,
I'm talking
totally.
about screen use. I'm talking about lack of any kind of intentional or unintentional movement. It's just not to mention exposure to sunlight and circadian rhythms and all the other things that we
Sleep
know around
patterns.
sleep. Absolutely. It's huge. It's huge. So again, unfortunately, Oprah and her team did not ever discuss these two factors, the food or the lifestyle. They simply stated that obesity is now a disease, and they implied that its best treatments must include medical and surgical intervention for true success. There was no talk of food or a hyperpalatable food environment. And Paige and I strongly believe that true healing from the effects of the food environment we currently live in can only come from addressing the root cause and focusing on the skills we can develop to deal with the triggers in our environment.
I agree with everything you said 100%. And before I even start in, I want to make it clear we have great empathy, compassion, and understanding for all of those suffering. I- our hearts break for these people every single day, the people we work with and we're exposed to, and for our own lived experience. Um, so it's important for us because of our past experience and our care and concern for others is that this whole story be told. As Dr. Robert Lustig, professor of pediatrics in the Division of Endocrinology at University of California, San Francisco says, we can't drug our way out of a food problem. We also want to stress that there are no quick fixes for this all-encompassing problem, as Jamie was indicating. It's not just food. It's a lot of factors that are playing into this. We have to deal with the addiction first, especially if our goal is to ever lose weight and to keep it off. People can lose weight. It's the keeping it off where we have leptin problems, and we can get into that biology later. But weight loss is the best way to assure quick weight loss is the best way to assure quick regain plus extra, because that underlying behaviors and habits that contributed to the problem from the beginning are often not addressed. So Jamie and I created Real Food Recovery with these different branches of recovery to cover all aspects of our life for exactly this reason. We certainly understand the desperation of wanting to lose weight. Nobody understands that better than us. We want to empower you to care for your needs because we don't want to cheat anyone out of the opportunity for true healing. That's the reason we approach it this way. It has to be from a recovery stance first, or you will never lose weight unless we get at the root problem. We want you to have the opportunity to feel confident, trust yourself, be proud of your accomplishments. All of that is crucial in recovery. And so many of these lessons are lost through these quick fixes. You're just like, okay, I've got to white knuckle it through this quick change, and then I'll worry about the rest later. But that doesn't even address the pain that inevitably comes when things don't work. When we see this shiny new nickel and we're so excited, and then it doesn't end up being what we thought it is. That is so much trauma, mental trauma, when things don't work out. It actually causes way more suffering.
So true. And that's in a nutshell, Paige. That is exactly why years ago, when I considered bariatric surgery back in 2006, 7, I considered it. And I remember saying exactly what you just said here. I would not have the blessing of the lessons. And I knew what I needed to learn for long-term change wouldn't have been taught to me in just a quick fix, even though it's certainly not in a quick fix, as we know. So we're going to start where Oprah starts. And this is the whole topic of food noise. Food noise can be defined as a continual distraction that keeps us trapped in a food loop. So it's the constant seeking, the planning, the imagining where our next meal or snack will come from. It makes it hard to focus on the things that really matter in life, like, I don't know, our family, our jobs, our careers, relationships, our interests, things like that. If the goal is to quiet this food-seeking brain of ours, the question becomes, what are our options for quieting those obsessive thoughts of food?
Mm-hmm.
What will I eat next? What sounds best? How can I get away with what I want? And if I eat this, will I have to work out that long, or do I have to restrict the rest of the day? Or, what if I have this today and then tomorrow I just don't eat? Oprah shares her experience with this and suggests that semaglutides were the answer to solve her problem. So let me revise that: semaglutides. Sorry, I said that wrong. Semaglutides. And those are examples like Ozempic, drugs like Ozempic.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, she even became emotional when talking about the relief these drugs gave her. She called it freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Paige and I totally understand that freedom and the way it feels, and that relief that comes from the calm, quiet brain. But our experience with recovery, and the one that we promote here in Real Food Recovery, gives you the exact same freedom and relief without the concern or side effects of drugs or alterations, permanent alterations to our physiology. And even if some of those surgeries are not permanent, you're still going in and having a surgery to once, twice, 3 times, and going into your body with foreign devices when it doesn't, it can create, when it's not required, can create all kinds of complications. Not only complications during and after surgery, but complications emotionally,
Oh, yeah.
physically later, years later. Not to mention, it is very well documented the lack of nutrient absorption, and all kinds of psychological fallout, the transfer of addiction that happens from food to alcohol for many of these patients. And there's just so many ways. It's not just about the drugs, it's really about the surgeries as well. We guide people at Real Food Recovery through the process of healing the obsession, addiction, and food abuse by rewiring addictive pathways in the brain for a lifetime of recovery. So it's not about these this might be a strong word, but I really believe it's barbaric approaches to physiological changes or chemical changes that we don't know what the long-term effects are. What Real Food Recovery, what our focus is to give people that same freedom, those same outcomes for their entire life with no negative side effects, with no sort of this ghost or this negative thought. What if it catches up to me? Or what if something happens later in life that I didn't expect because of this drug or because of this surgery? And Paige and I also know that this life free of food obsession is the big, beautiful life that we all deserve. And we have our branches of recovery that help us prioritize self-care for the long term.
Yeah, I agree. That's yeah, that's it. It's going to be a lifetime no matter what. You either have to do a lifetime of the weight loss drugs or you can do a lifetime of skill building. It's a choose your hard situation. I actually never thought my brain could be quiet, but it is amazing what happens when you get off processed food, especially sugar. For me, that was my drug of choice. I am no longer in prison from that drug. I'm free forever as long as I stay away from it. And it's so empowering to not fear I've got a birthday party to go to in 2 days and one next week, or a holiday gathering. I've got family coming in this weekend, or going out to dinner where we have to go out to dinner tomorrow night or to some event. I don't have to worry about that continual will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I at rapid fire. And the negotiations have stopped. And I never have to make that decision again about sugar. I really made a hard decision, and that helped me quiet the noise because it's not a conversation any longer. I will never go back to that pure hell that I was living in. Oprah talks about still eating bagels, but now she only eats half a bagel. Well, what that told me when she mentioned that, she was very proud that she could just stop at half a bagel. But what it really told me is that she is still trying to moderate these processed foods or ultra processed foods. It will never work.
In the
These,
long term, no.
no, you're trying to moderate immoderatable things. It's the same with drugs or alcohol or whatever. You just cannot have that in small amount and think, oh, look at me. I can now do this like I was wanting to do all along. I mean, sure, that's what everybody wants, right? To be able to have a little and stop, but the foods aren't designed for you to stop at a little. So the only reason you can have a little is because your GLP-1s are working in your brain to help you stop. So these drugs are being used to moderate processed food, and no one serious about their health should be consuming processed food. It's that simple. She's still looking for that third door, and there is no third door in recovery. She never talked about recovery. She just talked about how the drugs help her eat less and quiet the noise. In recovery, there's only abstinence the same way with any other drugs. Just like I said, alcohol or drug users just cannot have one drink or one bump or whatever. Another point is that Oprah used her this kind of bugged me a little bit. She used her guests to pull on our heartstrings, and I don't like being manipulated like that. She told these big emotional stories combined with this, dramatic, compelling music in the background, and it's sales trickery because she used that with people that had the most dramatic outcome. She found those people to share their stories, and then it's promoted as if that is the average experience for everyone. Her first guest never mentioned one side effect, one concern about cost, or whatever her long-term plan was. And lastly, she never even talked about if she had ever given up processed foods as an option to see if that could ever work. So we have to ask, could she have reached these big goals through abstinence, through skill building? I don't know. And I'm not judging her. I'm just saying we don't have that information because Oprah never asked her about any of those things. It makes me wonder if she didn't, because otherwise it might have been a conversation. But again, I don't know. So again, the major focus was just playing on our emotions to get the audience. I mean, the whole audience was nodding in agreement and wiping their tears through this tragic story. And I don't like being manipulated through emotional stories like that because it puts people off the scent of the track.
That's right.
It makes you lose focus on what we're really talking about here.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And again, they never discussed the costs, and they never the financial costs. They
I mean,
discussed the emotional costs, the physical costs.
yeah.
They never talked about the financial costs, and if this financial investment that people are making, which we'll get to in a few minutes, if that really does provide a true return. And again, I guess it depends on what you're measuring as your return.
Right. She used
Um,
stories that were all rainbows and unicorns.
totally, totally. Yeah, it was just truly, I'm just immensely disappointed in the whole trajectory. In case you guys haven't picked that up yet, Paige and I are a little
Really?
disappointed in how this whole topic was presented.
Mm.
We would love to do a study of the volume of food noise when living a processed food-free life compared to those taking the drugs or having the surgery. It is our experience that a quiet brain can be achieved by a lifestyle built around single ingredient foods, getting plenty of sleep, making movement part of your daily routine, and inviting a routine spiritual practice. Once these foundations are in place, then we can begin to layer other basic self-care practices like self-awareness, emotional intelligence, service to others, creative pursuits, etc. But what makes our own experience so compelling is that we hear our members sharing their personal stories of the chatter disappearing in the same way that Paige and I experienced it.
Mhm.
No, it's because the processed foods are being eliminated from their lives too.
Right,
No drugs required.
right.
It is literally the difference of thousands of dollars a month or what we charge $79 a month to have the same effects. And you're getting a
Yeah.
whole bunch of skills and a community to boot. Again, we literally live in a different brain when our choices support peace, allowing our gut brain axis to do what it was designed to do, which is to communicate clearly.
Yeah. And to add on to that, Jamie, Oprah's two experts she invited hit on the concerns of these comorbidities. This one really got me because they were saying these people are going to die in this most dramatic way. They are dealing with heart disease, diabetes, inflammation, immobility, insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and they lifted several more. But again, it wasn't the whole story. And that's what gets me so irritated. Yes, they're going to die if they don't do something about it. These drugs are one way, but there is another way to reduce all these comorbidities because what got them there to begin with was the processed food. We're not looking at the root cause. So my thought was this can be resolved through daily habit of sticking to the non-processed food. We've talked a lot about the statistic that over 1.6 million people die every year from diet-related disease. These are lifestyle deaths that can be reversed or avoided by change and can be done without the use of these drugs. We're not saying this is easy. Believe me, we understand this is a challenge, which is why support groups are so vital. when you're trying to recover. As Vera Tarman told us, the number one advice she had for people is get into a support group, because you can't do it on your own. If you could, you would have, and you haven't. So that's why support groups are so important. We are very, very sensitive to the struggle that it is to get off of this in an environment that is fighting against you. So that's where the skills come in. So we're not saying it's easy, but it can be done. So for me, back to the comorbidities, they are not a selling point for me with the drugs. Lifestyle is still an optional cure that should be looked at very first.
And it was never discussed on this very
Right.
special episode. It was never discussed.
You're right. That's probably the most disappointing, don't you think, that the lifestyle and the processed food never even.
And again, there's no shame around the processed food either. It's not that we are not saying we don't feel shame or blame, because we know now the food environment we live in, we are not designed to navigate effectively.
Right.
That to me is the ultimate shame buster, right?
Right.
I'm not designed or wired to live successfully in the environment in which I live.
That you've said it a million times that you were reacting exactly as your body was programmed to react to those specific foods. So no big shocker there, right?
Oh, so again, it just feels like we're not hearing the whole story if we're talking about, oh, it's a disease, and we're not talking about lifestyle. And in order to cure this disease, or to treat this disease, because there was no talk of the cure word, it was all about treatment. To treat the disease, there is this drug or this surgery, and these are the solutions for this disease. And I'm like, whoa. So here's the thing. I'm all for empowerment, self-empowerment, self-leadership, whatever you want to call it. And Paige and I both deeply want to give our members and our community that we're building here on YouTube, on the podcast platforms, and in our virtual community with our members. We want to empower everyone to take control of the things that you can control. And this special episode was all about putting your life and your health in the hands of other people, and of other companies, and of corporations that do not have your best interest at heart. They truly don't.
Oh, I mean, I, I, even Oprah couldn't argue with that. I mean, the
Because
miss.
Oprah doesn't have your best interest at heart either. If she did, she would be talking about food environment that we live in, and the lifestyle that most people can control, so that they can give themselves a chance. And if they're choosing to do these drug interventions, medical interventions, or surgical interventions, wouldn't they be infinitely more successful and long-term success, long-term avoidance of any fallout, if they were looking at their food environments and their lifestyles?
Mhm.
So again, let's just tackle the fact that that's all aside from these drugs have now been approved for children starting at 12 years old.
Crushing.
Children, these are prepubescent, right? Most girls are not in puberty by the age of 12.
And who gives these children their food? Where do these
Exactly.
children get their food
I
from?
don't know any 12-year-old that's got their own job and is driving to the store to get their own food. Now, there are lots of young children that are industrious, and they have jobs, and they might walk to the corner store and get their food. I know I did that a little bit here and there growing up. But ultimately, a child at 12 is not in complete agency of their own life, right? Or their own food. So Oprah goes on to tell this heartwarming story of this young woman who at the time was 11 years old, with severe obesity. She was 300 plus pounds at 11 years old.
Almost 300 pounds.
And thank you. And now she is the recipient of surgery, and now on semaglutides. And she has had a weight loss over 100 pounds, and she's now a cheerleader. She's starting to drive. She's going to the prom. She's got all these, amazing advances to her young life, socially. And this young woman, her physiology has been forever altered, and she has now, on these drugs that we don't really know the true term side effects. And what I felt when I watched this young woman is I lived her experience. I know exactly how that young woman felt and feels. I know exactly, almost exactly how her mom felt
Sure.
about wanting to give her daughter everything she could to help her, give her every opportunity. And I don't fault mom or daughter in either in any way, because they took what opportunities were given to them and they felt like they were doing the best thing they could have to give their daughter healthiest chance at life. I understand. My goal is not to point a finger at this mom and this young woman. My goal is to give others who are listening, who might be in the same place as this young woman was, and her mom was, is to let you know that there is another way out of this. That you do not. I lived that life. I was easily over 200, probably 250 pounds at that age. I am a tall woman. At that age, I was tall for my age too. I was probably 5'6", 5'7" at 11 years old. If I was living in the ultra processed food environment that we have today, if I was living in that environment when I was 11, I would have been over 300 pounds like this little girl. There's no doubt. But 35 years ago, we didn't have the type of food environment that we do today. So I just want to be clear in saying that, yes, obviously I share that experience of this young woman, of the way that I ate was very similar to her. The way that I packed on weight very quickly, very similar to her. And there's no doubt that I would have had the same weight struggles, extreme weight struggles that she did at that very young age. And looking back and seeing what I've learned in my recovery, I can't imagine at 12 years old to have my physiology altered and to have these long-term effects that I won't know about, that might affect my ability to have a family, to live a long, healthy life, to actually recover from the things that led me down that path in the first place. Could there be another way? And that's our point. We're not saying that it's about calories in, calories out, or eat less, move more. We're not saying that those are the answers, but we are saying that sticking to that whole idea of large volume of nutrient dense, single ingredient foods can help you feel as satiated and as vibrant and as life filled as you deserve to be, without having to have these outside interventions.
Yeah. And I love that you pointed out, we are not judging this family. We have not walked in their shoes. We just want to make sure, again, that we give options for people in that situation, of another option to try before going to that extreme, because I'm not sure at 13 you can make, we don't understand, our brains aren't developed enough at 13 to make big life long-term decisions. So it's just there is a no-win situation in that. It's a tragic story, and we don't want to see any children suffering. That is for sure. It was interesting though when the mom was talking about this, and she did, by the way, mention that they did get a lot of backlash, and her response was, just walk a mile in our shoes.
Totally.
And the parents did talk about doing everything that they knew at that time to do. So it was interesting that the mom said that she struggled as well with weight. She still struggles with weight, but the drugs, she's on them as well, and they did not have the same effect on her. She briefly mentioned that she would like to try other brands, but their insurance didn't cover it, so they cannot afford for her to try a different one, even
Don't you
though.
wonder if that drug company stepped in and stepped up just to get a little press out of that?
Oh,
I
possibility.
wonder if we'll see that in the news.
Oh, possibly that would make a good story, right? So that does bring up the discussion of cost. The manufacturers have made it clear This is a lifetime prescription and it only works as long as you are on it. So what about all the stories where people's situations change? They can no longer afford the medication or insurance would stop covering it. Or what about the shortages for those that really need it for their diabetes? And what about the mental health risks of those that can no longer get it and they have not learned the skills that Jamie and I have been talking about to heal the root problem, the addiction, and they go back to their old habits and the weight starts piling back on? I can't think of anything more depressing. Huge mental trauma. In fact, I was talking to someone today about that they knew someone that had been on it and they were trying to cut back to where they were maybe taking it every other day. They really don't want to be dependent on it. And it was reported that, I mean, the cravings came back with a bang. The efficacy was not as strong. Yeah, just the volume eating urges were coming back, the weight starting to come back on. We know another person who was sharing their story about they were on it and they had to stop because they couldn't stop vomiting. They had to go to the ER because they couldn't stop vomiting. Similar, I think there was a lady that shared that in the Oprah special. Literally, the vomiting would not stop. And a lot of GI issues, constipation, and this burping and nausea. So there's added trauma when things don't work, when you are so hopeful. I understand it's so desperate to find something that will work. And then when you put all your heart and soul and think, this is it, oh my gosh, relief is finally on the way. And then when it doesn't work, it just compounds the trauma. So, and it also makes me wonder, so people that can't get it and still are willing to do anything to try it, it makes me wonder about how many people would make financial, risky decisions just to keep getting their drugs because they're in a panic to be without it or they're desperate for a solution. Just a lot, these just, there's nothing easy about this. I just
Yeah,
keep going back to habits and lifestyle and looking at the root problem for long-term effects for free seems
that's
to
right.
be a better way to go. It's
Yeah,
not
that's right.
immediate. It takes a while. Recovery isn't overnight. You have to be willing to be diligent. But if
Yeah.
you want it bad enough, you'll make change. Change comes from need, and there's a need there. So people that want it will be willing to make the changes necessary.
Yeah, and let me just circle back to something, Paige, you said earlier about some of the side effects of these semaglutides. And the reason behind these side effects is, it slows, these semaglutides slow gastric emptying, which means that the food you eat, including the processed foods that your body doesn't recognize as foods because they are drug-like substances, chemically laden, they literally sit in your stomach, in your intestines, in your colon and bowel
Not good.
much longer than they were meant to.
Uh,
It slows down the emptying of your body of the toxins it needs to empty. So what happens is everything that literally sits in our system starts to back up. That's why these poor patients are getting nausea that's uncontrollable and these sulfur tasting and smelling burps and all kinds of reflux. It's literally because your body cannot do what it was designed to do. And the better question is, that the folks I know, for me, if I was coming in hot off of a food obsession or food addiction, I wouldn't be eating carrots and celery and broccoli all day, right? I'm going to be trying to have my Big Mac and eat it too, right?
Right?
So you're literally sitting there with this ultra processed food in your gut. What do we think that does? Even if there's no long-term effects from the GLP-1s that are created and floating around in our system, what is that doing to our gut microbiome?
Mhm.
What is that doing to our health? What is that doing to effects of colon cancer? What kinds of effects long-term do we have on our stomach, on our intestines, on our colon from having these foods and our bodies holding on to it and trying to get rid of it? Are we poisoning ourselves? And what are we doing to the long term and for the long term implications of our health? So, I'm going through my perimenopause and menopause journey, and I talked to a midlife a midlife wellness doctor. And one of the things, she mentioned, in addition to blood tests and other things, she said, oh, well, a lot of women in your age range are starting to come to me about weight loss drugs. And I said, no. And she said, well, if you're looking at weight loss drugs, it would be $2,500 a month. And I just laughed and I said, no, I'm definitely not looking at that. And I guess, again, I've heard costs, from $1,000 a month up to, now this 2,500. I assume some of them will include the drugs and a food plan, or the drugs and coaching. I'm not sure. But again, I just want to be clear that on top of all of these side effects and all these long-term ill effects, you are paying a house payment.
Oh, yeah.
Or on the low end, a luxury car payment.
Yeah.
To give you this elusive thing
Temporary.
that you could give yourself. You could give yourself for free.
Yeah.
Again, another interesting point is the CEO of Weight Watchers, also on this episode, appeared to report on their current philosophy. Weight Watchers has also now started to add semaglutides to their weight loss plan, because they have research that confirms that counting points and allowing you to eat what you want in moderation just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Business
we
model for them.
Shock, we could have told you that for nothing. Watchers. Again, she said that they missed the third prong of the biology. They weren't looking at biology, which is what we already know, right? Here at Real Food Recovery, and those in this world of food obsession, food addiction, food abuse recovery. Biology works against us when we eat processed foods, and they are designed to trigger our biology to work against us. That is why they are addictive. That's it. There's nothing else to say there. The topic of biology leads right into the matter of side effects. So one other thing that we were so disappointed about this, very special episode that Oprah did, was she spent exactly 1.5 minutes. It was a total of 90 seconds to report on side effects from one of her experts. So again, and actually 30 seconds of that 1.5 minutes was rebuttal from the big pharma rep that was sitting in the audience. So it was just very clearly a full 1 hour commercial for big pharma. It was such a disappointment.
Yeah. I want to swing back to what you're talking about when we have ultra processed foods and that's sitting in our gut. The beauty of single ingredient foods is, in general, they're, the fruits and vegetables. We really push a lot of plants with our protein as well. And of course, plants have protein as well. But they're filled with fiber and water. Those are the biggies that we want. Our digestive system is going, woo! Feed me more of that. Give me more of that, mama. I want as much as fiber and water as you can give me. That's what the intestines were designed to handle. And peristalsis, it's the wave-like mechanism of the intestines that push things through. The fiber and water is what aids in that and helps you avoid being constipated. So can you imagine eating foods that are low in fiber and water and just sitting like a rock in your gut? It's a recipe for disaster, a huge recipe for disaster, which is what we are telling you, reporting on with some of our personal experiences that we have had, the side effects that we personally have heard from people specifically that have had experiences with this. If you have to end up in the ER because you are throwing up continually and can't stop, something's wrong. Nobody should be on that. They reported on the special that there's only 17% of the people that get it. And one of the specialists said, but they're mild. They're all moderate and mild side effects. And I'm like, if I'm throwing out blood or I can't stop throwing up and I have to go to the ER, I don't consider that mild or moderate. I think that's a big problem and can lead to other big problems. So again, all major trauma. It's a lot to go through when we have such simple solutions. We promise what we're helping you with, nobody's going to end up in the ER.
No. And guess what? it's not even like, well, all of this constipation and my big belly filled with poo that won't come out of my body is all worth it because I'm walking around in a size 0. That never happens, guys.
No, never.
There's no data that supports that anyone who's taking these drugs ever has more than a 20 to 30 pound weight loss. And if they do, they are starting out from a place of severe obesity, like I was.
And that's what was not reported. And that's why I have a problem with the special in air quotes, is because they picked the most dramatic stories with the biggest loss, and they never said results are not typical.
That's right.
And so that's why I don't like being played like that. And that's why I'm in such a ire over that, because it's so misleading and it sets people up for, again, more trauma. You try this and you're not having over 100-pound weight loss. I thought I was going to have this. So again, more trauma around that. There's already so much trauma around trying every diet and not working.
Or
And
being overweight to begin with is
of
traumatic.
course, that in and of itself. So this is just another silver bullet that leads to pain and suffering. And don't we all know that those feelings of having so much hope in that next shiny thing, and then it doesn't work as our happily ever after like we thought it would? It's something we put all of our faith in, and it's just so depressing. And we don't want people to be in that space. We're trying
No,
to help people not be in that space.
no. And again, one other thing we want to bring our viewers back to on this is this whole idea of muscle wasting as another side effect, another concern. Anytime anyone loses weight quickly, there will be some degree of muscle loss
Yes.
or of lean tissue loss.
Mhm.
We know that the heart, right, is a muscle, and so that can be affected as well. And that's why many people in the medical establishment, physicians and even bariatrics specialists will tell us that the yo-yo dieting is very harmful to our heart, and losing weight drastically rapidly or gaining weight drastically rapidly is very dangerous on our hearts. So none of this is to be taken lightly. We welcome the discussion on this, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk more about this, because this is truly our attempt to look at the rest of the story. And we're looking at it, just a reminder, we might be, Paige and I live in this world and in our bodies today after years of recovery, but we have lived where these patients have lived. We have walked in their shoes, and we understand what they're feeling, the desperation and the impatience and the frustration and the anger and even the rage. We
Yeah.
understand it. We lived it. And we live it every day if we make the choices to go back to those foods. And that's why we just want everyone to know that there is a way out. And the whole idea that you can have the insurance of hope, the insurance that you can be free of this obsession, you can be free of the noise, as Oprah refers to it, you can be free, but it will take a commitment of a different kind and for a longer term, and it can be permanent. And that to me is the whole story.
Mhm. Anything else you want to share about this?
No,
Anything
go ahead and close it up.
The insurance company, they were interviewed there, and they brought out that obesity does not have the same coverage as other diseases. Our hope is that insurance will actually acknowledge obesity and food addiction as a disease, and through these conversations we're having, that we will begin to talk more about coverage for preventative care along with these recovery programs. We would love nothing more than the society we live in to recognize our root problem and say, where can we help? Where does preventative medicine fit into this? And honestly, it would save them bazillions a year compared to all the medical expenses that are out there if we could offer more benefits for preventative care. I think
Well,
that is a
that's a
place.
whole other episode. That's a whole other episode.
But the bottom line is, in our recovery program, we are helping people make choices that their body was designed to tolerate,
Mhm.
not choices that foods that we eat are foreign to how our body is wired. So that's what our recovery program is about. It's based on lifestyle. It's based on solid decisions for people, whether they have food addiction or not. Our branches of recovery really are for anybody that just wants to live a good, happy, long life without disease and waking up regret-free every morning. And these are the type of things that also enhance our relationships, our own self-esteem, our own worth, and it allows our world to get big, 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 instead of when you're in the processed food, it gets small, 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 and we don't want that for
Mhm.
anybody. And if you want to find out more, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U, and we would love to see you there. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being with us today.
Take care.